A busy bottling plant turns routine pallet handling into a conveyor zone concern when an unexpected loss of footing brings a worker too close to a moving mechanical gap. Approaching active machinery to manually adjust loads can expose you to unpredictable shifts and hidden floor gaps. On this roadside, walking past a loaded flatbed truck becomes a serious hazard when unsecured cargo shifts outward into the walking path. Walking through the immediate fall zone of loaded transport vehicles exposes you to sudden material movement. Cargo shifts unseen during rough transit, quickly turning stable stacks into major struck-by risks. When primary restraints fail, heavy, dense material can release in seconds. An open street excavation leaves almost no margin for error as a motorcycle tries to pass along the narrow edge and loses balance near the road gap. Trying to ride along the narrow edge of an open pavement void exposes you to sudden instability. Loose dirt gives way under tire pressure, pulling the bike off balance. Navigating too close to the drop transforms a minor wobble into a major loss of control hazard. Urban contractors must firmly install rigid blockades to physically separate traffic from deep drops. City inspectors should mandate bright reflectors to warn approaching vehicles early. Every commuter needs to completely avoid these narrow, unpaved edges. Besides an open rural path, bracing a tall ladder for an elevated worker becomes a serious safety concern when a swerving motorcycle reaches the ladder support and knocks the elevated worker off balance. Placing temporary climbing frames near active transit routes exposes elevated individuals to unpredictable contact from nearby vehicles. Speeding vehicles can lose traction on loose dirt surfaces. An accidental slip sends heavy machines directly into fragile supports. This collision removes base stability in a second, causing the overhead worker to lose support. Site coordinators must erect rigid blockades to heavily shield vulnerable work zones from incoming traffic. Area monitors need to physically redirect riders far away from elevated tasks. Climbers must tightly anchor to solid structures. A factory lifting area turns hazardous when a heavy coil slips from its rigging and moves downward into the danger zone. Suspending immense weight above active spaces directly exposes everyone to major struck-by risks. Connections can fail instantly, transforming a routine lift into an unexpected falling load hazard. When straps slip, the load can shift unexpectedly. This rapid movement creates a large exclusion zone, leaving anyone nearby with very little time to safely move away. Lifting controllers must perfectly secure every connection before elevating heavy cargo. Zone directors need to enforce wide, empty spaces directly beneath the overhead flight path. Every single bystander has to stay far away until the object firmly touches the solid ground. A quiet storage dock shows how quickly an unsecured stack can shift when thin boards begin sliding off a manual jack during movement. Moving loose, stacked materials without tight binding exposes the load to sudden shifts. Smooth surfaces easily glide against each other when pulled. A slight momentum change quickly breaks the friction holding the pile together. Once the bottom layers slip off the forks, the entire weight shifts completely downward, leaving little time to stop the material release. Always wrap slippery boards securely to a solid base before moving them. Push the manual lift slowly to keep full control over the weight. A foundation wallwork area becomes risky when a builder steps from a ladder and relies on a thin temporary frame that cannot support personal weight. Trusting temporary structural forms to hold personal weight exposes you to major loss of stability risks. These supports are designed to hold pouring materials, not to handle sudden pulling forces. Applying your weight quickly breaks the fragile connections. Once the thin metal bends, the grip completely vanishes, leaving limited room to recover before reaching the ground below. Site directors must supply dedicated scaffolding for elevated tasks. Safety auditors need to mark temporary forms as unsafe anchor points. An indoor demolition site becomes unstable after repeated wall strikes weaken the structure and cause an uncontrolled material release. Weakening the bottom of heavy vertical structures directly exposes anyone nearby to sudden falling hazards. Removing lower supports shifts immense overhead weight quickly, turning a solid barrier into a serious material release zone. The total mass can release in a split second, leaving almost no time for anyone in the marked hazard zone to move away safely. Structural evaluators must perfectly map out safe breakpoints before any swinging starts. Hammer operators have to secure the upper sections to stop uncontrolled drops completely. Every single person nearby must honor a wide exclusion radius until the demolition is totally finished. An industrial pump room creates a hidden fall hazard when a worker mistakes flimsy warning tape for a solid handrail near an elevated edge. Mistaking warning strips for rigid fall protection directly exposes you to serious drops. These fragile bands only mark visual boundaries and possess zero structural strength. Leaning your weight against them quickly breaks the weak tension. The false security vanishes in a split second, allowing you to lose edge protection with no solid anchor left to resist the fall. Platform designers must construct permanent metal barricades along all open drops. Hazard auditors need to replace deceptive string barriers with immovable steel fences. A roadside excavation zone becomes unstable beneath heavy equipment as soft soil gives way and tips an excavator toward the open trench. Traveling over loose, uneven soil directly exposes heavy machinery to sudden, unpredictable shifts. The ground easily gives way under high weight, quickly throwing the center of balance off. When the earth under one track crumbles into an open void, the entire machine tilts uncontrollably. Site planners must pack and level the soil to build strong, stable transit paths. Equipment drivers need to carefully test the ground firmness before driving near any open drop. Inside a packed warehouse, moving from the base of a freestanding stack quickly creates an uncontrolled collapse hazard. Extracting items from the base of towering, unbraced inventory directly exposes the entire pile to sudden failure. These massive columns rely entirely on bottom support to stay upright. Removing just one segment quickly breaks that fragile balance. The immense overhead weight moves downward immediately. This falling mass contacts neighboring piles, creating a large chain reaction that leaves almost no time to safely move away. Facility designers must install sturdy metal racks to support heavy loads independently. Lift drivers need to completely avoid pulling items from unsupported bases. Inventory checkers must immediately dismantle tall, unbraced cargo. A bustling cargo facility exposes a lift hazard when a freight platform unexpectedly lowers while a loader remains near the opening. Standing inside an unsecured vertical transport exposes you to serious mechanical drops. These platforms rely entirely on holding gears to stay suspended. Tossing heavy objects creates sudden force that can break weak locks. Once the suspension fails, the floor can lower from beneath your feet. The platform can move unexpectedly and create a fall risk in a split second, leaving little time to grab a ledge. Equipment designers must install automatic brakes that lock when doors open. Site coordinators need to firmly enforce strict weight limits. A busy fabrication shop becomes a fire risk area when a sudden spark reaches nearby packaging and a small ignition begins spreading through cluttered material. Working in cluttered spaces without immediate emergency tools leaves everyone unprepared for sudden fires. A small ignition easily catches onto dry cardboard, multiplying its heat in seconds. When a fire faces no rapid chemical resistance, it feeds freely on surrounding materials. The ignition can quickly outgrow basic control efforts, turning a minor event into a major thermal hazard. This rapid spread overwhelms the floor, leaving little margin to exit safely. Building planners must keep strong extinguishers near active tasks. Safety auditors need to clear dry debris away. At this crowded parking lot handling area, a manual pallet jack bumps a live forklift and sends the equipment forward, turning the workspace unpredictable. Lifting active motorized equipment with unpowered transport tools exposes the area to sudden mechanical failure. A simple physical bump can bypass delicate safety locks. This unexpected contact quickly sends massive metal frames surging forward without warning. Once the wheels catch traction, the heavy load accelerates completely out of control. Equipment drivers must firmly lock all internal brakes before any external adjustments begin. Facility planners need to strictly separate handling zones from parked vehicles. Everyone present has to maintain wide physical distance during complex transfers. A home renovation work area shows the danger of unstable height setups when an extension ladder is balanced on a narrow scaffold frame. Stacking climbing tools to reach high elevations destroys your foundation. These structures require solid, flat earth to safely distribute weight. Elevating the base creates a dangerous pivot point. When you climb, gravity pulls backward against the top support. The lower platform cannot handle this strong force and quickly gives way. The setup loses stability in a split second, leaving you with no support to stop the fall. Site planners must measure target heights before starting tasks. Tool purchasers need to supply single devices long enough for the job. Every individual must plant bases on solid ground. Inside a steel processing facility, guiding an overhead crane becomes a serious safety concern when the lifting rigging unexpectedly fails and a heavy beam moves downward. Walking underneath suspended materials exposes you to instant struck-by force when hardware fails. Hoist straps carry immense tension during transport. When weak points snap under extreme stress, gravity immediately takes full control. The solid payload drops downward with significant speed. Tool purchasers must source durable synthetic slings precisely rated for extreme industrial weights. Inspection specialists have to thoroughly examine every single cable connection before raising loads. Floor guides must use long extension poles to steer objects from safe perimeters. An automated production floor becomes a serious safety concern when a worker enters an active machine path and a moving arm changes position. Entering the operating radius of programmed machinery exposes you to sudden contact force. These metal joints follow strict digital commands with zero awareness of human presence. When a heavy arm swings back, it moves with significant speed and power. The blind steel can overpower anything standing in its preset path. This immense pressure creates a severe close contact hazard against solid frames in a split second, quickly limiting escape routes. Facility planners must enclose moving sections with rigid cages. System programmers need to install instant motion sensors. Every individual has to stay completely outside painted hazard boundaries. A sloped residential driveway turns a loading task into a runaway equipment hazard when an unanchored trailer begins rolling forward. Loading heavy machinery onto an unhitched platform exposes the entire setup to uncontrollable momentum. The immense weight of moving equipment easily overcomes basic tire friction on the incline. Once those tracks fully cross the threshold, forward energy quickly pushes the wheels downhill. Without a solid towing vehicle locking the hitch, the loaded flatbed accelerates freely. This runaway movement leaves the driver stranded on a speeding, steeringless platform, offering very little chance to brake safely. Transport hauliers must lock the main hitch to a heavy truck before loading. Independent operators need to wedge thick blocks against all resting tires. A cramped glass workshop becomes unsafe when a handler tries to tilt an oversized panel and the fragile sheet shifts beyond control. Manually balancing oversized brittle materials directly exposes you to sudden structural failure. These large surfaces rely on perfect weight distribution to stay completely intact. A minor slip or uneven pressure quickly overwhelms their internal tension. When that physical limit breaks, the solid barrier immediately gives way. The sudden collapse creates a heavy wave of fragmentation hazards across the area, leaving very little time to safely move away. Workspace architects must design secure angled racks to prevent sudden material tipping. Every glass artisan has to wear thick protective gear before handling raw edges. At a waste transfer site, unlocking a sealed tanker hatch becomes a serious safety concern when trapped liquid and air suddenly release. Unsealing large transport tanks without venting internal air exposes you to sudden pressure releases. Shifting fluids build immense trapped energy inside the metal walls. A closed valve keeps this massive force completely silent. Releasing that barrier quickly unleashes a strong outward rush. Heavy liquid releases forward with significant speed and power. Valve handlers must slowly open tiny relief points before fully turning main latches. Truck engineers need to point release pipes firmly toward the dirt. Every bystander has to wear thick facial shields near tanks. In a narrow residential alley, guiding a tall cargo truck becomes a serious safety concern when the upper part of the vehicle contacts an overhead balcony. Routing oversized vehicles through tight spaces without checking vertical clearance exposes ground guides to falling structures. High truck cabins can wedge against low overhangs. As the engine pushes forward, the metal frame transfers immense braking force into brittle concrete. This sudden pressure quickly shatters the fragile architecture. Heavy building materials immediately detach and fall straight down into the walking path. Route coordinators must strictly verify height limits before dispatching transports. Ground spotters have to maintain safe, wide distances away from blind impact zones. A busy food pantry turns a routine rack movement into an equipment hazard when a base wheel detaches from a heavily loaded bakery frame. Moving heavy storage on faulty metal hardware causes sudden collapse. Tall rolling structures rely entirely on 4 solid points to stay upright. When a caster snaps off, it quickly destroys the balance. The massive weight of the stacked goods shifts toward the missing support. This rapid gravity shift completely overwhelms the base, pulling the structure to the floor. Equipment buyers must install highly durable hardware. Floor monitors need to demand visual inspections before transit. Material handlers have to step away immediately if structures tilt. A busy sawmill becomes unsafe around stacked timber when a small touch disturbs the balance and sends heavy logs falling. Interacting with unstable stacks of heavy lumber directly exposes surrounding personnel to serious struck-by hazards. Timber piles rely on precise balance and friction to stay completely in place. A simple accidental bump can quickly overcome these forces, destabilizing the entire arrangement. When heavy logs lose their position, they fall with massive weight and speed. Zone planners must install high-strength barricades around all log storage areas. Safety monitors need to enforce strict physical distancing rules for all non-essential personnel. Lumber handlers have to secure all stacks firmly to prevent movement from minor contact. A bustling lumber yard shows how a snagged plastic sheet can create a balance hazard when tension releases suddenly during a strong pull. Applying intense force to stuck objects exposes your balance to sudden shifts. When you pull against resistance, your body weight is fully committed to that movement. Once the obstacle gives way, that energy has nowhere to go. Your posture breaks, and you can lose balance suddenly. This unplanned fall happens in a split second, removing your ability to regain stability. A loading dock becomes dangerous when a worker climbs down a forklift mast, and the moving structure creates a pinch point hazard. Riding on a forklift mast creates dangerous pinch points that activate with immense speed. These steel structures rely on hydraulic force, turning even small, unintentional movements into severe close contact hazards. When the mast pivots, it creates a closing gap that quickly presses toward the machine frame. This rapid mechanical action occurs faster than anyone can react, leaving very little space to avoid the pressure. Facility controllers must enforce strict off-limits policies. Equipment pilots need to lock the movement controls. Observers should mandate dedicated access stairs. In a wood processing workshop, standing too close to the intake becomes a serious safety concern when active machinery begins pulling material in. Standing near active wood processing intake zones exposes a person to immediate contact risk from powerful moving components. These systems maintain immense force to pull and process raw timber, turning any nearby object into a target for rapid intake. When you position yourself too close, the machinery's pulling force quickly overcomes your stability. This quick, forceful pull occurs faster than anyone can react, leaving almost no margin to withdraw. Facility planners must install clear safety perimeters around all intake points. Operation leads need to restrict ground-level access during active processing. A towering construction scaffold turns a health issue into a height safety emergency when a worker loses stability without a fall arrest system. Working at height with pre-existing medical conditions exposes you to sudden serious incapacitation. Even a brief loss of awareness removes all motor control, turning a routine task into a total loss of stability. Without a fall arrest system, there is no protection to support you during such an event. Stability can be lost in a split second, creating an immediate height safety emergency. This unplanned event occurs without warning, showing why secondary safety gear is necessary to protect against risks that are completely beyond your physical control during high-altitude tasks. Medical teams must enforce strict fitness standards. Also, site leads need to verify harness use. A vehicle maintenance workshop becomes hazardous beneath a raised truck cab when the support system fails during an inspection task. Working beneath a raised, unsecured truck cab exposes you to serious support failure hazards when the support mechanism fails. Hydraulic systems rely on pressure to hold immense weight, but they can drop if the lock fails. Once the cab begins to descend, it moves with strong momentum. This rapid equipment movement happens quickly, leaving little time to clear the space. The cab can lower with enough force to create a major emergency, transforming a routine maintenance task into a hazardous situation without any prior warning. Technicians must engage locking pins. Inspection leads should verify support struts. Shop owners must enforce two-person confirmation rules. To keep learning from these important workplace safety lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay aware, stay safe.